So according to one poll recently, 70% now say they back these stricter gun laws, up from 52% who said so in a different October poll, not long after that mass shooting we were just talking about in Las Vegas. 27% oppose these stricter laws. And if this is all the case, if this is all true, Paul, tell us why the politicians out there remain afraid to take on the NRA.
Well, you're talking about a very significant change, and I really feel, I've been doing this for a long time, and you have to be a bit of an optimist to be fighting gun violence for as long as I have and not completely giving up. But the feeling is different this time because it's coming from the students, it's coming from the youth, it is a general voice that people are just sensing that it's time. And in answer to your question, why are people afraid of the NRA? It's because of the money. The NRA supports candidates that it grades as high, A or A+, on gun issues, and it spends significant amounts of money opposing politicians that don't. And that's why politicians are afraid.
Well, let's say that this poll is in fact correct. Are there organizations out there like the one you're associated with that also give to candidates?
There are, but not on that scale. The NRA's annual budget is something like $460 million. And when you think about it, membership in the NRA is, I think, $40, and you would have to have an awful lot of members to come up with that amount of money. So obviously the money's coming from somewhere else. And where it's coming from, and this is not me making it up, this is fact, it's coming from gun manufacturers, and it's coming from bullet and ammunition manufacturers. If you look at the people that receive their golden circle of freedom, or whatever they call it, for giving $1 million to the NRA, it's all gun manufacturers. So they're interested in selling guns. So that's why the 40%, and I would guess that if you took a poll of NRA actual members, a significant number of them would agree that sensible gun legislation makes sense. But the gun manufacturers don't sell guns if that's the case. Well,
suffice it to say, it's not popular to be supporting the NRA at the moment, and we've got some midterm elections coming up in the United States. So tell us, will people be, in fact, outcast at the polls if they are supported by the NRA?
The difference this time, and again, I say I'm an optimist, is that it feels like it's continuing. There's some momentum. After the Las Vegas shooting and even after the Pulse shooting in Orlando, there was a big uproar and everyone got upset, and then 2 weeks later, there was nothing. And I appreciate people like you keeping this on the forefront, but it's not only it's not only the media, it's also the general people, the general populace. People are very interested in this issue now, and I think you're right. I think if the momentum continues, people will be voted out of office if they're wrong on this issue.
All right,
I think that there's a feeling.
Paul, I want to talk about the Second Amendment, because we always hear after a mass shooting, what is it? Guns don't kill people, people kill people. And everyone has the right to bear arms. And then that goes back to the debate about, was the Second Amendment written with the intention of me being able to go into a store and buy one of these AR-15s and wipe out, 100 people at a time? How can this country get around looking at the Second Amendment and redefining it possibly and talking about what it was originally written for?
We could spend the entire show talking about this and wouldn't even begin to touch on it. The essence of it, though, is that our country, our government, was founded on the basis of people being allowed to bear arms. Now, we could argue that it was only intended to be for a militia. We could argue that, yes, the Constitution said you could bear arms, but the Constitution also contemplated slavery, and we changed that. But the fact is, and the D.C. versus Heller decision recently, the Supreme Court decision, supported the fact that Americans do have the right to bear arms, but they also supported the fact that laws can be implemented that reasonably restrict gun ownership and reasonably restrict who can have guns and where they can have them. So it's not an unlimited right, and people are starting to realize that, yes, we can argue back and forth as to whether the Second Amendment allows for private individuals to have guns, but the Supreme Court has said that it does. And I'm comfortable with that, but it's also said that there are reasonable restrictions that can be placed on that ownership. And that's what we're talking about. So bump stocks, even there's really no need for a tactical weapon except if you're in a tactical situation, if you're in the military or law enforcement. There's no need for a 20-year-old to be able to own a gun, to buy a gun, if you can't even buy a drink. I mean, there's reasonable restrictions that can be had.